Today we will be discussing regarding the cultivation, collection and storage of natural drugs, and I am Mrs. Deeksha Rai, Assistant Professor and HOD, Department of Pharmacognosy. So the table of contents goes like advantages and disadvantages of cultivation of natural drugs, organic farming and types of organic fertilizers, methods of medicinal plant propagation, factors that will affect the cultivation, and we will also discuss about biopesticides and chemical pesticides. So the specific learning objectives, so at the end of the lecture, students should know the advantages and disadvantages of cultivation of natural drugs, what is organic farming, the different types of organic fertilizers, methods of medicinal plant propagation, the factors that will affect the cultivation of natural drugs, and what are biopesticides and what are chemical pesticides, and the difference between biopesticides and chemical pesticides. So the methods of cultivation of natural drugs. So the crude drugs like cardamom, clove, Indian hemp, poppy, latex, tea, cinchona and various other natural drugs, they are obtained by the cultivation of the plants. So the cultivation of vegetable drugs involves convergence of various agricultural as well as the pharmaceutical factors. The different factors that will affect are the climate, rainfall, irrigation, altitude, temperature, fertilizers, pesticides, the genetic manipulation methods, biochemical aspects of the natural drugs. Advantages of cultivation of natural drugs. So the advantages is that by cultivating the natural drugs, we will get good quality and purity of medicinal plants, and the uniformity is maintained in all the operations during the process of cultivation, and also high quality of the yield can be obtained. The cultivation of the rhizomes that will demand an adequate quantity of fertilizers as well as proper irrigation. So systemic cultivation is required to get a maximum content of the phytoconstituents. So example, if we take the example of ginger and turmeric, so they are the drugs which contain volatile oil. So the systemic cultivation will yield in the high amount of volatile oil as well as other phytoconstituents. Collection of crude drugs from cultivated plants will give a better yield as well as therapeutic quality. However, it is a skilled process and it will require a professional excellence. So if the collection of crude drugs is done for the market, it is done from the skilled and well experienced person, the high yield of the crude drug will be obtained. So for example, collection of the latex from the opium poppy, it is done by the experienced person and it can result in the high yield of the crude drugs. Cultivation also ensures the regular supply of the crude drug. So cultivation is a method of crop planning. So planning a proper crop requires its supply, and as a result, industries which are dependent on the crude drugs do not face the shortage of the raw materials. The cultivation of medicinal and aromatic plants also lead to industrialization in a greater extent, and the cultivation of coffee and coca in Kerala has given rise to the several small scale and cottage industries. If we take the example of cinchona, so the cultivation of cinchona in West Bengal has led to the establishment of the cinchona alkaloid factory near Darjeeling. So cultivation permits the application of modern technologies such as mutation, polyploidy and hybridization. So the disadvantages of cultivation of natural drugs. So high cost of the cultivated drugs compared to the wild sources, and also the loss due to the ecological imbalances, maybe the earthquakes or the storms, floods, droughts, etc. So they are the major disadvantages of cultivation of natural drugs. Okay, organic farming. So organic farming it's a method of agricultural production which avoids the use of synthetic products like fertilizers, pesticides, growth regulators and livestock additives. So successful organic farming will depend on crop rotation, use of manures and all biological pest control methods to maintain the agricultural output. So organic farming and water holding capacity plays a very important role for the growth of the medicinal plant. So organic matter which is obtained from the poultry manures or the organic manures, farmyard manures, the oil cakes, compost, etc. So these are all the examples of the organic matter. So organic matter is the food of earthworms and microorganisms of the soil, and it is a very rich source for the growth of the natural drugs. Microorganisms with the suitable pH, that is 6.5 to 7.5, and the temperature of 23 to 27 degrees centigrade and optimum moisture that will fix the atmospheric nitrogen in the soil and supply to the plants for the growth. So there are certain microorganisms which are responsible for the fixing the nitrogen in the atmosphere, that is rhizobium or azotobacter or azospirillum. So organic farming, it works in harmony with nature, and also it involves the use of techniques to achieve good crop yield without harming the natural environment. So what is the principle of organic farming? So main principle is that the nature is the best role model for farming, and since it does not require any input or demand and unreasonable quantities of water. So the system of organic farming, it is dependent on the nature, and it is a living entity. So living population, that is the microorganisms and other organisms, are the significant contributors to the soil, and they must be protected and nurtured at all cost. So the total environment of the soil, from soil structure to the soil cover, it is very, very important in the organic farming. So organic farming is defined as the farming system which primarily aims at cultivating the land for raising the crops in such a way so as to keep the soil alive and in good health by the use of organic waste. So what is the need of organic farming? So the need of eco-friendly alternative, that is the farming system, it arose from the effects of the chemical farming. So the main methods of farming involved and adopted by the forefathers for the century are very less injurious to the environment. So people began to think of various alternative methods, and however organic farming, it is considered as the best approach of farming because it is the scientific approach and it is having wider acceptance all over the world. So what are the benefits of organic farming? So the first one is that it will increase the soil fertility, that is for a long term, and also it will control the pests and diseases without harming the environment, and also it will ensure that the water sources, they are clean and safe, and also the resources which the farmer already has, so the farmer needs less money to buy the farm inputs, and also the crop what is obtained by organic farming is nutritious and it is a good feed for animals, and also it is of high quality which will be sold at a very good price. The types of organic fertilizers. So according to Department of Agriculture, so natural organic fertilizer has to be derived either from the plant or from the animal materials. So organic fertilizers are defined as the materials which are used as fertilizer that occur regularly in nature, usually as a byproduct or the end product of the naturally occurring processes. So we will see the different types of organic fertilizers which are there. So first one is the compost. So compost fertilizer is a organic matter. It may be the plant or the animal residues which has already been degraded by the action of bacteria. So the bacteria will be showing its action on these materials and it will cause the decay of the material. So materials such as leaves or the fruit skin, animal manure can be used for making the compost. So one advantage of the compost fertilizer is it is very cheap, it is easy to make and also very effective, and that can be added to the soil, so which will increase the soil quality as well as the crop quality. The advantages of compost is it will improve the structure of soil, allows more air into the soil, avoids the drainage and reduces the erosion. So the second advantage of using the compost is it will improve the soil fertility by adding the nutrients, and it will make the plants easier to get the nutrients, and also therefore the yield is better. So compost also improves the soil's ability to hold the water and it stops the soil from drying out in cases of the drought. So compost can reduce the pest as well as the diseases in the soil and also the diseases that will affect the crop. So next organic fertilizer is the green manures. So they are nothing but the green crops or the plants which are grown to improve the structure, organic matter and the nutrient content of the soil. So green manures, they are cheap alternatives when compared to the artificial fertilizers, and they can be used as a complement, and they can be used to complement the animal manures. So growing green manure is not the same as simply growing a legume crop. Okay, so green manures are usually dug into the soil when the plants are still young, before they produce any crop, and often before they flower. So they are grown in the green leafy material which is high in nutrients, and it will improve the structure of the soil. Advantages of green manure is it will increase and recycle the plant nutrients and organic matter. It will improve the fertility of the soil and structure of the soil. Also it will improve the water holding capacity of the soil, and it will stop the soil erosion and also prevent the growth of the weeds, that is unwanted plants, stops the nutrients being washed out of the soil. So the other organic manures is the blood meal, that is the blood that is obtained from the slaughterhouses, which is a very good source of nitrogen. And the bone meal, it is one of the best source of phosphorus, it is applied at the bottom of the plants. The fish meal, which is a very good source of micronutrients, which is specifically used to feed the container grown plants after the every 2 weeks. Then the poultry manures, that is the waste products obtained from the poultries, and it's a very good source of micronutrients which is used in agriculture, floriculture as well as in the greenhouses. Next, the advantages of organic farming. So organic farming is very important because it is naturally occurring sources, and the lower amount of greenhouse gases that are released into the atmosphere. Then organic fertilizers do not produce essential nutrients to plants, but they also improve the structure of the soil. And organic matter helps to break the heavy clay soil, improve the air circulation and also the drainage, and also increases the capacity of sandy soil to retain the moisture content. So when the organic fertilizer is used for a long time, organic fertilizer will increase the quality of the soil, and in turn it will increase the efficiency of nutrient utilization. What are the limitations of these organic fertilizers? So cost of organic fertilizers is more when compared to the synthetic fertilizers. Organic certification is required for documentation and for the regular inspection. Organic fertilizers, despite having the advantages, still they release the nutrients into the surroundings, and these nutrients can find their way into the local river streams, and that is how the nutrients get wasted. And motivations for using organic fertilizer vary from user to user. So users, they want to go for organic in order to sell the products, and members of the society may be interested in organic farming for home use because of the environmental concern. So this will increase the final yield of the final price of the crop. So next we will move on to the methods of propagation of the medicinal plants. So medicinal plants can be propagated by two methods, that is, one is the sexual method of propagation, the other one is the asexual method of propagation. The sexual method of propagation is the seed propagation method, so where the plants or the seedlings are obtained by sowing the seeds. So sexual method of propagation is having some of the advantages. So seedlings what are obtained by the seed propagation method, so they are long lived and they bear more heavily, and seedlings are comparatively cheaper and they are easy to raise. And propagation from the seed has been responsible for production of some chance seedlings of high superior quality, and also it is having the great importance. And in case of plants where other vegetative methods cannot be utilized, propagation from the seed is the only choice. So some limitations are also there. So generally seedling trees are not uniform in growth and their yielding capacity. So some plants may yield a very less quantity of the crop, or some may yield little more, so it is not uniform, and also it will require more time to bear as compared to the grafted plants. The cost of harvesting and the pesticide is also more and when compared to the grafted trees. So for propagation purpose, the seeds must be of good quality, they should be capable of high germination rate, they should be free from diseases as well as other insects. And the germination capacity of the seed, it will usually be tested before the seeds are sown. So testing will be done by different methods. There is a rolled towel test, then excised embryo test. Some tests are there where the seeds will be tested before they are sown. The seeds are preconditioned with the help of scarification in order to make them permeable to the water and gases. So if the seeds are not to be germinated in the near future, it will be stored in a cool and dry place in order to maintain their germinating power. So long storage of seeds should be, however, avoided. So before germination, some of the chemical treatment is given with the help of some of the stimulants like the cytokinins, ethylene, gibberellins, etc. and thiourea, potassium nitrate, which will also promote the growth of some of the dormant seeds, and also it will stimulate the growth of the seedlings. So thiourea is usually used for the seeds which do not germinate in dark or which is at a high temperature. So when enhancement of germination is required, so treatments are given for the seeds such as soaking the seeds in water for a day. Example is the castor seeds. So in order to promote the growth of the castor seeds, they are soaked in the water for a day so that the growth rate of the seedlings is high. So what are the methods? There are different methods for sowing the seeds. So first method is the broadcasting method, where the seeds are, if the seeds are extremely small, very small in size, so it will be done by the broadcasting method. So in this method, what they will do is the seeds are scattered freely in a well prepared soil for cultivation, the seeds only need raking. So they are deeply sown or covered by the soil, they may not get germinated. So necessary thinning of the seedlings is done by keeping a specific distance. So it is a broadcasting method is very essential method when the seeds, whichever the seeds you are growing, it is very small in size. So example, we can take the example of crude drugs like the isabgol or the sesame, which are very small in size. So they will be sown by the broadcasting method. So dibbling is the next method where the seeds of average size and weight are available. So they will be sown by placing it in a holes. So number of seeds, so they will be making holes in the soil, and in each hole they will be keeping 3 to 5 seeds. So depending upon the vitality and the sex of the plants required. So dibbling is the second method required for the sowing of the seeds. This is an example of raking of the seeds. So the next method is the asexual method. So in case of asexual method of vegetative propagation, so vegetative part of the plant, it may be a stem or a root, it is taken and it is grown in the soil, it is kept in the soil for the development of the new plant. So there are some advantages of asexual method. So there is no variation between the plant grown. So whatever the plants will be grown by the asexual method, there is no variation. So as such, the plants are uniform in growth as well as the yielding capacity. So in case of fruit trees, uniformity in the fruit quality makes the harvesting and marketing easy. So seedless varieties of the fruits can also be propagated by vegetative method, that is the seedless grapes or the seedless lemon, pomegranates. So these can be obtained by the asexual method. And plants start bearing earlier when compared to the seedling trees. So budding and grafting, they also encourage the disease resistant varieties. So we can get the plants which are having the disease resistant capacity. So modifying influence the rootstocks and the scion and can be availed of. So inferior and unsuitable varieties of the plants can also be overlooked. So these are some of the advantages. So coming to the disadvantages, so when compared to the seedling trees, they are not vigorous in growth. So the rate of growth is not vigorous and they will not be long lived also. So no new varieties also can be obtained by this method. So whatever which part you are taking, so same variety of plants you will be getting. So there is no new variation or new varieties. Okay. And the vegetative propagation. So vegetative propagation is done by sowing various parts of the plant in a well prepared soil. So they will be preparing a well prepared bed of soil in which they will be sowing the seeds. So following are the examples. So the bulb of garlic or the potato tubers or the rhizomes of ginger or turmeric. So they are being grown by the vegetative propagation. Aseptic method of micropropagation. So it is a novel method of propagating the medicinal plants. So in micropropagation, plants are developed in an artificial medium like the aseptic conditions and from fine pieces of the plants, maybe the single cell or callus, embryo, root tips, shoot tips, etc. So they will be collecting from the plant and they will be growing it in the suitable medium. So they are provided with the nutritional and hormonal requirements. So whatever the auxins or the gibberellins, whatever the hormones they are required, it will be supplied to the medium and it will enhance the growth of the callus. Next, we will move on to the different factors that will affect the cultivation of the medicinal plants. The first factor is the altitude, temperature and the humidity. The second is the rainfall and irrigation, soil and soil fertility, different fertilizers, different kind of pest and the controlling the pest. So first moving on to the altitude, temperature and humidity. So altitude is a very important factor in the cultivation of medicinal plants. Tea, cinchona and eucalyptus, they are cultivated favorably at an altitude of 1000 to 2000 meters. So the cinnamon and cardamom, they are grown at a height of 500 to 1000 meters, while senna is the drug which will be cultivated at a sea level. So altitude is a very important factor when you are cultivating the medicinal plants. The other important factor is the temperature, which is the one which will affect the growth of the plant. So excessive temperature as well as froth will affect the quality of the medicinal plant. So camphor and coffee, so these two drugs, they cannot withstand the frost, whereas saffron will be grown only in the cold climate, and pyrethrum drug requires dry weather for cultivation. Next is rainfall and irrigation. So except the xerophytic plants like the aloe or the acacia and few others, so most of the plants, they either require proper arrangement of irrigation or they require sufficient rainfall for the favorable development. Soil and soil fertility is the other factor that will affect the growth of the medicinal plants. So soil provides mechanical anchorage as well as water and essential plant food elements for plant growth. So capacity of soil to supply the plant nutrients in quantities and proportions required and to provide a suitable medium for plant growth is known as soil fertility. So clay soil is one of the highly weathered portion of the soil, and it will give adhesive and cohesive properties, and also it will hold the nutrients. So clay soil is having the property of holding the nutrients. So the soil contains different mineral matter, air, water and organic matter. So it is the mineral matter which makes a lot of difference. So you can see that there are different kinds of soils, like the alluvial soil, the clay soil and black soil, red soil. So what makes it different from each other is the amount of the minerals that is present in the soil. So mineral matter will be a coarse gravel, coarse sand, or in the form of the fine particles. So air and water, it will give rise to the pores, while purified and decayed plant and animal parts will give the organic matter. So any type of soil containing less than 0.5% of organic matter is considered as poor, and more than 1.5 to 5% of organic matter is considered as a rich soil, and the soil with 0.5 to 1.5% of the humus, it is called as the intermediate soil. A soil which is good for the plant growth should have half of the pore spaces filled with water and the rest with the air, and hence good aeration is very good essential for development of the roots. And one more factor that will also help in the growth of the plants is the pH. Okay, so the pH range should be in between 6.5 to 7.5. And to bring the pH to neutral, acidic soils can be limed or alkaline soils can be reclaimed by addition of gypsum. So acidic soils are not suitable for leguminous plants, and therefore poor development of nodular bacteria in the acidic soil. So therefore groundnut, sunflower seeds, cotton and rice, they grow better in alkaline soil. So acidic pH is disadvantageous as it will solubilize the iron content which is present in the soil. So some of the plants like tobacco, cinchona, tea and potato, they grow well in the acidic soils. So soil fertility. So what do we mean by soil fertility? It is the capacity of the soil to provide the nutrients and adequate amount in the balanced proportion to the growing plants. So if cropping is done without fortification of the soil with the plant nutrients, soil fertility will be lost, and also there will be leaching and erosion. So soil fertility can be maintained by adding the animal manures and also the help of nitrogen fixing bacteria and by the application of chemical fertilizers. Next is the fertilizers and manures. So chemical fertilizers. So as animals are in need of vitamins, plant also requires 16 nutrient elements for synthesizing various compounds. So some of them are called as primary nutrients and the other is called as the secondary nutrients. So like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, so they are considered as the primary nutrients, whereas elements such as magnesium, calcium and sulfur, they are occurred in small quantities and hence they are called as the secondary nutrients. So also apart from primary and secondary nutrients, we also have the trace elements which are required. The elements required in the minute quantities may be copper, manganese, iron, boron, molybdenum, silica and zinc. So they are the ones which are required in the minute amount. So every element has its own specific function in the growth and development of the plant, and its deficiency also will lead to the certain kind of symptoms in the plants. So manures, so farmyard manure is the one which will be used. Apart from that, the castor seed cake. Castor seed is a very good source for castor oil. So after pressing the oil, whatever the yield is there, after taking out the oil, whatever is remaining, so that is a very good manure. Then poultry manures, etc., they are also good manures. So oil cake and compost, normally they contain 3 to 6% of nitrogen and 2% of phosphate, 1 to 1.5% of potash. So apart from that, bone meal, fish meal, biogas slurry, blood meal and press mud are the other forms of organic fertilizers. Biofertilizers, they require inadequate supply. One disadvantage is that supply is not uniform, and also it has a high cost and undesired effect if it is successively, or they are some of the demerits. The biofertilizers are the most suitable forms that can be tried, and they contain different types of microorganisms which will help in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, and hence the plant, they are also the symbiotic. So next, coming on to the next factor is the pest and pest control. So as the population increases in the arithmetic progression, so agricultural produce is enhanced in geometric progression. So whatever the man has reaped, it must be protected. So unfortunately, there will be different pests which will be affecting the growth of the crops. But unfortunately, the medicinal crop is harvested and consumed, so considerably quantity of crude drug is wasted and destroyed by the pest. So besides, there is loss in quality because these pests will be allowed to grow in the produce. So overall loss due to the pest infestation is leading to millions of rupees loss for the cultivator. So the control of pest thus assures primary importance in the context of cultivating the medicinal as well as the aromatic plants. So now we will move on to different methods. So the pest, how can we get rid of the pest? There are different methods to control the pest. The first one is a mechanical method. So mechanical method is employing the manual labor along with the different devices for destructing the pest. So simple techniques are hand picking, pruning, burning and trapping of pest, and proper approach is made for collection and destruction of the eggs or the larvae of the adult insects. So better way for protecting from rodents like rat and concentration of concrete warehouses. So warehouses with metal reinforcement on windows, the rat and mouse traps are also being used. So the method adopted for trapping the flying insect is to embrace funnel shaped containers which will attract these insects. So you have to keep the rose oil or anise oil, so it will be mixed with the sawdust. So these will have the ability to attract the insects and hence the insects will be trapped. So next one is the agricultural method. So it covers the advanced plant breeding techniques capable of inducing genetic manipulation resulting in the production of pest resistant species. So it has achieved much success, this agricultural method, it has achieved much success in producing hybrid varieties of the plants and also to get the resistance to fungal and bacterial attack. So the systemic insecticides have been developed which are absorbed through the roots and reach to the leaves, by which all the foliage portion becomes distasteful for the insect. So another aspect in agricultural control is deep ploughing to eradicate the weeds. So deep ploughing is essential so that you get rid of the weeds and as well as the insect which is there in the surface of the soil. So if a plant is found out to be favored by insects as majority of the source of the food, so the land under cultivation of such plants should be subjected to crop rotation, that is the changing of the whatever the crop you are growing, so you have to rotate it. So biological control, so this is a method practiced by combating the pest, mostly the insect, with other living organism. Okay. So this method is properly designated, it will be used as a very effective, safe and economical method of pest control. So the chemical substances which are produced and released by some female insect, they are capable of eliciting a sexual response from the opposite sex, which could be properly exploited for biological control of the pest. So such substances, they are called as sex pheromones. So example is 7,8-epoxy-2-methyl octadiene, which is obtained from the gypsum moth. So one of the experiments worth noting is the screw worms, which have been successfully carried out in the USA. So the large number of laboratory reared male insects are sterilized by exposing to the radioactivity, which is such a dose which shall not affect the physiological activities of that insect. So irradiated insects are released in nature in large number so as to take care of the normal males that is existing in the area. So this leads to the ineffective mating and sharp decline in the progeny. So next is the chemical method, that is the get rid of the pest with the use of some chemicals. It may be fungicide, herbicide, rodenticide or maybe the insecticide. So because of the toxic effect of such chemicals, so these insects will be destroyed. So chemical pesticides are further classified as rodenticides. So example for rodenticide is warfarin or strychnine, insecticide DDT, that malathion, then acaricides tetradiphyon, then fungicides, herbicides. So there are various classes of the chemical fertilizers. So now we will see what are some of the parameters of ideal insecticide. So if you are ideal insecticide, what are the parameters? So one is that it should be non-toxic, it should be non-injurious to medicinal plants as well as human beings. It should also be selective in action and it should be highly toxic to the insects in small concentration. The pesticide should be stable under ordinary conditions of storage, it should be non-flammable, non-corrosive and it should be free from obnoxious odor. Also, it should be non-cumulative in soil and possess stability on the treated surface. Next, we will see the biopesticides which is required for protecting the crops. So, biopesticides are the pesticides derived from natural materials. It may be the animals, plants, bacteria or other certain minerals. So, in the year 1800, that is Erasmus Darwin predicted the use of natural predators to minimize the pest in the book Philosophy of Agriculture and Gardening. So, chemical pesticides are hazardous, they will cause damage to the health, ecosystem and water. So, to boost up the food production, the use of chemical pesticides was favored and to some extent it was useful. But the uncontrolled and unscientific use of chemical pesticide has led to the disaster and created various problems such as insecticide resistance, resurge of secondary pest, pollution of the environment, residues in the food, water as well as in the breast milk. So, some differences we will see, some differences between the biopesticides as well as the chemical pesticides. So, as I already told, biopesticides are completely non-toxic to the plants and it will increase the chlorophyll pigment in the plants and also the amount of proteins. They are eco-friendly, they do not cause any physiological damage. They are used in very small concentrations and also they will prevent the multiplication of insects. They are biodegradable and do not retain any residues or toxins, and they are not harmful on microorganisms or the pollinating insect as well as the earthworms which are present in the soil. So, now coming to the chemical pesticides, they are poisonous and hence they will destroy the chlorophyll as well as the proteins. Then excessive use of these chemical pesticides will cause environmental pollution, thereby causing physiological damage and ecological imbalance. They are required in large quantity and cause mutation in the plants and hence new species of insect may appear. And also they retain the toxic residue on the, and also these residues are dangerous to the human beings, and also they will affect the harmful effect on the microorganism, earthworms and also the pollinating insect. So, the biopesticides, they are safe to handle, they are safe to transport as well as to spray, and they do not affect the soil fertility, they do not cause any chemical reaction and can be produced in large quantity, they can be stored safely, they are non-toxic and they also act as insecticides, fungicides, insect repellents and also some act as growth nutrients. But some disadvantages in the chemical fertilizers is that you need care for handling. That is, while spraying or while transporting you need to be careful and it will adversely affect the soil fertility, and they will cause toxic and harmful chemical reactions which are uncontrollable. They will produce hazardous effect on the human beings if it is sprayed in the habitat areas. Different products are necessary, like in chemical fertilizers you have to go for the separate set like insecticides, fungicides, insect repellents. So, the one advantage is that biopesticides will act as all like insecticide, fungicide, etc. Thank you.